Hey, I'm Mike, and after a little under 1 year and 9 months, Dragonflight has come to an end. And in this video, I want to talk about what I thought of the expansion and consider whether or not it's my favorite expansion of all time. Before I get into it though, I want to give you a little bit of context so that way you know where I'm coming from when I talk about certain things. I am a very casual player. I spend a lot of time playing, but I'm not hardcore into any single thing in the game. I played a lot when the expansion first came out for about the first month, and then I slowly fell off, and then I pretty much stopped playing by February of 2023, so just a few months after it came out. And I unsubbed from the game in March of 2023 just because I was bored in general of WoW, wasn't anything that Dragonflight in particular had done. I came back a year later in March of 2024, just before the Plunderstorm patch came out and before Season 3 started, and I've been playing since then. On my main, I have a total time played at level 70 of 34 days, 21 hours, and 50 minutes. I didn't really play many alts this expansion, but you can probably add maybe a day or two to that total. But you can also probably cut out like a week's worth of playtime from just AFK farming rares. So in terms of playtime alone, it's not my most played, nor is it my least played expansion. I'm kind of right in the middle there. So getting into it, before I talk about Dragonflight, I need to first talk about Warlords of Draenor. Because at the time when that expansion was current, I hated it. There was nothing to do and it was the worst. I'd log in, raid, log off. Warlords is still considered one of, if not the worst expansions ever. Shadowlands kind of gives it a run for its money. But what came after Warlords was Legion, which is considered by many to be one of, if not the best expansion ever. But with Legion, a new era of WoW started, which is one that I have not really been a big fan of, and it has made me enjoy WoW less. I know MMOs are about grinding and gearing up your character and spending time in the game doing usually some monotonous or tedious things to be more powerful. But in Legion we got artifacts and artifact power, and we just got this forever grind of gearing up your character. It seemed like there was no end. And then in BFA we got more of that, and then just systems that were just completely useless, pointless, boring, and awful. And then Shadowlands was kind of all the worst things of everything combined into one, and then multiplied by 100. And with every expansion that came out, I started to miss Warlords of Draenor more and more and more. I missed the simplicity of it. I missed being able to simply log on, raid, and log off without feeling like I'm falling behind in some way. And more, it started to feel like WoW was a job, and I really didn't like that. Which is why over the last few expansions, I haven't really played a whole lot. So I talk about Warlords and the expansions that came after it because Dragonflight for me felt like a return to a version of World of Warcraft that I always loved. Dragonflight was the first time in almost a decade where I felt like I didn't need to log in. I remember when I got to level 70, I did all my dungeons, I did all of my world quests, and then I was like, now what do I want to do? I could do literally anything that I wanted. There was no artifact power to grind. There was no Azerite gear to obtain. And unlike Warlords, there were things to do. I didn't just have to log off because there was nothing to do. And that pushed me into going for Glory of the Dragonflight Hero within like the first week of the expansion launch. Which for me is like my favorite memory of that initial launch week, is just going group after group after group, just getting these achievements. And at the time, that was the hardest content you could do. And it was just so much fun. And at no point did I feel like I need to be doing something else. So if I wanted to farm these achievements, or if I wanted to go level an alt, I could do that, and I'm not falling behind on my main. I love that because it took that simplicity of WoD and just stacked on top of it and made it an enjoyable experience for me to play. And just like always with Mythic Plus releasing and raids coming out, there is that element of you will just naturally fall behind if you're not playing, but the falling behind felt gear related instead of artificial power. Overall, just Dragonflight felt a lot more laid back and casual, both in terms of like the gameplay, but just in terms of the vibe itself. Like, we're just chilling with the dragons, just trying to fight some bad guys, and we're not trying to save the world again. Especially coming out of Shadowlands, it was so nice to kind of have this bright, almost happy, I would say, kind of feeling to the game. And just a moment ago, I'd mentioned world events, which there's just so much to do. And this is part of the thing I was talking about. There was so much to do. When Dragonflight launched, there were plenty of events, but by the end of it, and right now, there are so many things you could be doing. There's Primal Storms, the Siege on Dragonbane Keep, the Clan Alag travel thing, community feasts, grand hunts, time rifts, researchers under fire, Super Bloom, Dream Surge, Froststone Vault, Farak Assaults, and the Big Dig. Every zone has something for you to do in it, and it's all on this rotation, whether it's every hour or every hour and a half, or every 45 minutes, there's something for you to do in every zone. And there's some things that are just always up, like the Dream Surges, for example, or the Grand Hunts. And the thing is, you don't even have to do those things. Like, they're generally a good idea, especially early on if you want to get a little bit more gear and stuff, or resources or whatever it is. You probably want to do that, but like, you don't have to do these things. And if you can't tell already, that's one of the things that just bothered me the most, is that I felt like I had to do things in WoW. I felt like in previous expansions, I had to play a certain way. And in Dragonflight, I could play however I wanted to. If I wanted to be a casual, I could do that and not feel completely useless all the time with nothing to do. But staying on the topic of world events for just a little bit longer, I think overall they did a great job with them. They're all pretty unique. None of them are really that challenging or take too long. There's a good, like I said, time split between when the events are happening, so if you kind of want to fly around and hit them all, you can. I think some events are a little bit more interesting than others, like for example, the Community Feast is just awful, I think. But like Primal Storms or Grand Hunts or Time Rifts are a little bit more interesting and more fun to play. But it doesn't end there, because with those world events, they could have just done one thing and that's what you do every single time. You kind of become brainless in what you're doing and it all becomes muscle memory. And even to an extent, it still does. But with almost all of these events, there's just these slight variations where every single time you're doing it, it's not the same. Like the idea of a Primal Storm, yes, that is the same, but it's happening in different zones. Researchers Under Fire, every week it rotates which version of it you're doing. And I think that's just really great that they added these variations to it, so it just wasn't always the same thing you were doing. And for every world event, there was kind of this variation. I really like that. One thing I need to talk about for sure is dragon riding. After achievements, I think dragon riding is one of the best features Blizzard has ever added to the game. I don't remember when they made the change to make it so that you can't fly in an expansion right when it comes out. I think that might have been Legion. But ever since they made that change, I've hated it. I always hated getting flying, having it taken away. Getting flying, having it taken away. And I think that the way that certain zones in previous expansions were released, like for example High Mountain, I will never get over how awful of a zone High Mountain is to traverse with a ground mount. And with Dragonflight, they were like, okay, you can not only fly, but you can do so at like triple the speed you've ever been able to. And you can do it right away. And I love it. It's so much fun. It's so nice being able to first of all, move that fast. But with the nice big open zones that they created, it was so nice to be able to move around them freely and just admire the zone that they made. There were multiple times when I'd be flying somewhere and I would just hide my UI and just admire the scenery and how great it looks. The zones look fantastic. There wasn't a single zone in this expansion that I hated. Zaralek Caverns was a little bit rough at first, but over time, I don't mind it anymore. Compare that to other expansions though, like there was at least one zone in every expansion that I just could not stand. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it was because I had to go through that zone on a ground mount. Like if I could just fly around there from the start, it wouldn't have been that bad. But sticking on the topic of dragon riding, I love the dragon races. They were an absolute blast. That was probably where I spent the most time when the expansion launched, just getting all the gold races done. And even when I was working on the A World Awoken achievement, I was going to get all the Emerald Dream races done and get gold in all of them. And I think it took like 3 hours and it was definitely frustrating at times, but it was never boring. And what I was very surprised to see and very appreciative of as well from Blizzard is that this was obviously a fan favorite almost from the start. And many people were almost immediately asking for it to be implemented in old zones. And I figured that that implementation would not come any sooner than the 11.0 patch. I figured when the 11.0 expansion comes out, we'll probably get like the last maybe couple expansions updated for dragon riding. And then like with each major patch, we'll get like one more zone. And like over the next few years, eventually we'll have all the old zones dragon rideable. Nope, as far as I know, they just released a patch. Everything was dragon riding. Cool. There you go. What? It was like they just flipped the switch and that was amazing. Like going to Old World on your regular mount sucked. And then having the ability now to go with that dragon riding mount was just awesome. I love that they did that and I love how fast they did that. I won't dock points for this, but one thing I really didn't like though was the lack of dragon riding mount options. I get why they wouldn't put the effort into making all mounts dragon riding, because if the feature wasn't really well received, that was a lot of time spent, I imagine, updating all those mounts for nothing. But the options that we had, I think there was like 5 or 6 total, they just weren't really that great. From the initial launch, the Highland Drake is probably my favorite, but even that one is not that great. When I came back this year to start playing, the Netherwing Drake was definitely a much better option, and I actually really enjoyed riding that. But just the minimal amount of mounts you had to pick from was just not a very enjoyable experience. But despite the low quantity of mounts, I did like how there were different customization options for each mount. So that way you could make it a little bit unique to yourself and to what you enjoy. So that way, if I'm on a Highland Drake, it's not necessarily the same Highland Drake that someone else is using. Despite that, I do still think that it wasn't really the greatest looking mounts, but I do appreciate that they kind of gave us some options. The next thing I want to talk about are world quests, because I'm someone who really does enjoy doing them. It's very peaceful, very calm. I usually put on a podcast or throw on some music or a movie or something and just go out in the world and just do stuff. And I think that Legion's world quests were pretty good. I think BFA was kind of rough because they had like multiple phases of world quests. And I don't really remember Shadowlands, but I feel like it was this combination of phases of a world quest and like these kind of just medium length ones. I think that Dragonflight world quests were perfect. None of them were overly long. There were many where you could just walk in, do a thing, and then you're done. Like whether it was unlocking cages, or you can just do those climbing world quests, or the photograph cartographer ones. But there was no world quest that took very long to complete, and none of them were all that challenging either, which I liked. But what surprised me is how much variety there was. Like there was so many different types of world quests. Like even as recently as a couple of months ago, I was doing world quests that I had never seen before and thought, wow, that's pretty cool. I've been playing this expansion for, let's just say, a year, and I've never seen this world quest before. Since I came back in March, I've been trying to do all of the dragon riding and gold rewarding world quests every reset. There's usually a pretty long list of world quests to get through, but it only takes about an hour or two to finish all of them. And I like that I can either progress slowly through all of them throughout the week, or just on a Friday night when I'm not doing anything, just, like I said, throw on something on my other monitor and just plow through them all. The last thing I want to briefly touch on are dungeons and raids. Again, I'm a very casual player, so any sort of hard content I did not do this expansion. I am a friends and family member in a cutting edge guild. They will bring me along to heroic, no problem. If I really wanted to, I could probably squeeze into a couple of early mythic bosses if they have them on farm. I was able to be a carry in multiple Mythic Plus groups. I also have Cost Streams TV who helps with those as well. So I can't really speak to the difficulty or what it was like progressing through these things because I just didn't. What I do want to talk about is just kind of the vibe I got from them. I think dungeons are already coming in kind of at a disadvantage because ever since Mythic Plus was released, I haven't really enjoyed dungeons. I just think the idea of spamming them over and over again is just exhausting. But overall, I really didn't like the dungeons that had come out with this expansion. Ruby Life Pools was one that I didn't really mind doing because it felt short and it looked nice. Neltharis felt like it took forever. I did like how it looked though. Brackenhide Hollow is probably one of the worst just because of how excruciatingly long it is. I've talked about this in my weekly videos whenever I did it. It's just so long. It's not fun at all. The Azure Vault is kind of mid. It looks nice, I guess, sometimes, but it is a little bit long. The Noku Defensive is another one that I hate. Even with dragon riding, it just feels like it takes forever. It also, I'm not really, like, of all the zones, I know I said earlier, I don't really hate any of them. I think the Oneron Plains are probably like my least favorite. Alderman, Halls of Infusion, again, they look nice, but they are just so long. Alcathar Academy is kind of like Ruby Life Pools, where it doesn't really feel that long and it looks fine, so that one gets a pass. I think those are the two dungeons I kind of liked this expansion. And then from the little that I did from Dawn of the Infinite was just not really that exciting. I don't know what the War Within brings, but hopefully there are better dungeons, because I just think that for me, this expansion with the dungeons, they were probably like the weakest point for me personally. Raid-wise also, I feel like it just was a miss, this expansion. I don't know how people feel about them in terms of progression, but just from the little bit that I got to see, I wasn't really a fan. Amir Drasil is probably my least favorite raid. I don't like any of the bosses in there. I don't really like the way it looks. I just feel like I don't even know how to explain it. It feels like something's off in there. I feel uncomfortable when I'm in there. Aberrus has some interesting visuals, I guess, but again, nothing really that stands out in terms of a boss fight that would be memorable. Vault of the Incarnates is probably my favorite raid, and it's not even like the greatest. I do definitely like the last boss. That was a lot of fun and just very hectic, especially as you got into the higher difficulties, like when I did it on Heroic. That was a blast. But those are all the main points I wanted to talk about with Dragonflight. Like I said earlier, it was for me personally, a return to form of a game that I actually enjoyed playing and didn't feel like it was a job to play. I really enjoyed the more laid back vibe of it all. It felt like with Dragonflight, Blizzard put a little bit more of a focus on casual and maybe even solo players a little bit, which from what I've seen in The War Within sounds like they are going even more into, which for me just is awesome. But going back to what I was considering at the beginning of this video, am I ready to call Dragonflight the best expansion, my favorite expansion? I don't know yet, because I did have a lot of fun, but when I try to compare it to, like, for example, the Burning Crusade or Wrath of the Lich King, not to say that those expansions were necessarily better with their systems, but I'm just thinking about, like, the time in my life that I was playing that. Maybe that's an unfair comparison because, you know, being as old as I was and having all day, every day to play WoW, obviously I'm going to experience it differently. But one of the things I keep thinking about that I didn't really get in Dragonflight was just this community aspect from those days. Like, those days were all about raiding and just having a bunch of fun with my friends and my guildies. And when I came back earlier this year, I was definitely a little bit more social. I tried to be a little bit more involved with the guilds, but it's hard to say that as a whole, my experiences with Dragonflight were better than the ones that I had in the Burning Crusade or in Wrath of the Lich King, or even to an extent in Cataclysm. It's definitely my most favorite expansion in recent memory. And to be honest, even like depending on the day you ask me, like it might just be, what's your favorite expansion? Just Dragonflight. It felt like this expansion was catered to players like me who are, again, very casual and just want stuff to do in the game that's fun, that don't take it too seriously and can just go and just do stuff. It feels like Dragonflight is the first expansion in a while where I don't feel like it was great except for this, or it sucked, and here is like the main 3 things that sucked, like with Shadowlands. There's a couple of nitpicky things with Dragonflight maybe I didn't really like, but overall it was just a bunch of positives. And I think that also as a whole, Blizzard did a great job as well. And it didn't feel like they were pushing stuff on the players that was like this playtime metric mechanic. They just said, here's a bunch of fun stuff, go do it if you want, otherwise go do something else. And I'm really hopeful for the War Within to continue that trend. Just like I have for the last few expansions, I'm going into this new one completely blind. I mean, I know a couple of things, of course, because I'll read like the posts that that Blizzard puts out, but I haven't played the beta. I don't look at other people playing the game. I just want to experience the War Within with a fresh set of eyes and on my own. That's what made the first little bit of Shadowlands super fun for me. That's what made Dragonflight a very enjoyable experience, is like discovering everything on my own. From what I've seen, it definitely comes across like Blizzard is kind of continuing that focus, like I said earlier, on the casual and solo player, so I don't have any intention of changing that playstyle for myself. So if that's the case, if I'm kind of the catered to audience, this is going to be a fantastic expansion for me, just like Dragonflight was. So to put a bow on it all, Dragonflight was the best expansion in recent memory, and it is one of, and arguably the best expansion I've ever played. I loved it. I am definitely going to miss it. Dragon riding was the second best feature they've ever introduced to the game, only behind achievements in my opinion. And for the first time in a while, I am leaving an expansion feeling great overall and hopeful for the future. I think Blizzard has a good thing going here, and all they need to do is not screw it up. And as long as they can do that, the War Within is going to be a great expansion, and hopefully in 2 years time, I'm back here making a video talking about, yeah, Dragonflight was great, but the War Within was even better. And whatever the next one in this trilogy is, like, that's going to be insaner. I don't know what the War Within has in store for this channel, but I'm sure there will be a bunch of content coming out, and I'm looking forward to making it. If you pre-ordered the expansion, let's go. It is the start of a new era tonight. Enjoy yourself, pace yourself, and take a lot of screenshots, because the best time of an expansion is like the first 2 or 3 weeks. In my opinion, it is the most fun you can have in an expansion. No matter how buggy or laggy it is just this chaotic mess, and it's a bunch of fun. So enjoy it. And for everyone else who did not pre-order and is waiting until, I think it's Monday for the expansion to come out, I hope you can hold strong with the not pre-ordering over the weekend. And whenever it does come out, I hope you enjoy yourself as well. So that's it for my thoughts. Let me know what you thought of Dragonflight. What did you like? What did you not like? Where would you rank this in the list of all the expansions you've played? Anything and everything, I'd love to hear about it down below in the comments. If you like this video or any of my others, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe, because I'm trying to get to 100K and any little bit helps. If you're already a subscriber, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thanks again for watching. I'll talk to you soon. I love you. Bye.